a couple questions.
Hmm.
All right. Where did you go to school? What got you interested in IT?
Hmm.
Okay. And we'll start with there, and then I got a couple follow-up questions.
Yeah. Okay. Shall we start the beginning of my story then? so,
Yes.
so when I was a teenager, I was really into like first-person shooter games like Doom and Quake and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided what I wanted to be was a computer games programmer. So, someone who actually made the graphics engines for this. So
Mm-hmm.
I got myself like C for Dummies and C++ for Dummies, worked through those sometime when I was a teenager. Um, and, I found this really interesting. So I thought, well, when I go to university, I want to study related fields. So
Mm-hmm.
I applied to do computer science at York University, which I then did for, started there in the late 90s, which was, Y2K was really big.
Mm-hmm.
The first internet bubble was really on the rise at this point, and it was when I started university. It looked like when I finished my degree, you'd basically walk out and you'd get a job. It didn't matter, if you could switch a computer on, you could get a job right at that kind of time.
Yes.
Um, but sadly, I was there for 4 years, and during that time, tech bubble burst. Yeah, exactly. So suddenly it became quite a bit harder to find computer jobs after that.
Yep.
Fortunately, I did actually manage to find a job for a small uh, software company that was based up in the north of England, and they did built like the entire ERP type system for Hydro Aluminium. And this was all entirely custom built in Oracle, PL SQL, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of my introduction to this. Despite doing computer science at university, I think I had maybe 2 hours of, tutorials or lectures about SQL. I basically didn't know it at all.
Okay.
Um, so I was learning on the job quite rapidly,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I found I, quite enjoyed it. So since then, so that was my first job. I was a PL SQL developer, database type guy there for
Mm-hmm.
4 years. Worked in a hospital for a couple of years as well, similar kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
worked at an airline as the database guy again. And it's just one of those kind of evolution things where I found it interesting. I think it's interesting to I get really stuck into things when I start working on them, and I find interest in it. I try and understand how things work and how they all fit together. So that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of how I got into Oracle database programming. It was kind of by accident, but worked out really well for me.
Serendipity.
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly.
Fortunate accident. Some people.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
We both know people who use very big words,
Hmm.
and you have to
Yeah.
have a dictionary next to you when you talk to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You've been in databases since the early '90s.
Well,
I
early 2000s.
early 2000 or early
2000.
2000s. I started in the late '80s,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
mid to late
Yeah.
'80s. I think it was version 6 on VMS.
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never even touched version 6 or 7. I started on Oracle 8. So
Yeah. Yeah, we loaded it using tape.
nice.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. Um, so now you're in the advocate program, working for Mr. Feuerstein.
Yep.
I like to be a little formal.
Hmm.
And what would you say is the most rewarding part of that?
So this job is about helping people be more effective with Oracle database. A lot of applications, this is the back end for Oracle databases there. There is a lot of power in it, but there is a lot that you need to learn and understand about it. So it's just helping people learn how to do things more effectively, more efficiently. It's quite satisfying. When people are starting out, they kind of, even simple things or things we think of simple like joining tables, you get people going, oh, I've got to write like 100 lines of code to link these, and it's just like, well, you can type 2 lines of SQL or 3 lines of SQL, and it does the same thing. And this saves them a lot of time. They can be a lot more productive because they don't have to write all that code. And hopefully, some people at least are quite pleased to hear about this. So, it's just helping people be more effective in their job, learn how to use the tools more effectively, and be more productive. And hopefully, they are also then more valuable to their company too.
Yeah. What'd you say the most challenging part of it is?
So I think the flip side of that is, as I say, a lot of what I'm doing is explaining to people how things work. Something, once you get past the basics, some of them concepts are quite advanced, and struggling thinking about how to explain them in a way that people can actually get to grips with, understand, and relate to. So that's actually tends to be what I spend a lot of my time really doing, is thinking about how to write this or how to create a video to kind of explain things in an interesting yet also accessible way. And as you were saying before about words with big dictionaries, if you look through the docs and things like that, there are a lot of big long words which don't necessarily make sense. And certainly for a lot of people don't have a background in software development or computer science, and so you say, well, we just use a hash function to bloody join the things, and then like you've already lost me there.
You watch the eyes roll into the back of the head.
Yeah, exactly. So I say that's the more challenging aspect, is trying to find ways that are both interesting but also informative to help people understand how to use things better and more effectively.
Yeah. So if you were talking to a university student right now, okay, and they wanted to follow in your footsteps, what advice would you give them?
Well, I think the first thing is don't try and be me, right? Everyone's got their own unique path, and everyone's going to follow their own route. I never predicted I would end up in this job here. I'm really glad I have, but I would never have predicted it. But I think it's important to kind of always focus on learning and understanding how things work. And certainly when you're talking about programming, software development, that kind of thing, I think it's more important to understand underlying principles, what the basic units of programming, what a loop is, and so on. You see a lot of people kind of going, how do I learn Python, or how do I learn JavaScript? How do I learn technology X?
Right.
And I think that's kind of the wrong way to approach it. It's more about, how do I understand how to program? How do I write modular code? How do I write testable code? Or how do I test code? Things like that. Because those principles are going to last throughout your career.
Right.
The syntax you use and the, how your development environment, those will all change, but the underlying principles will stay the same. So I think it's important to kind of focus more on those rather than technology X and how do I understand the ins and outs of that.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The other thing I would say is try and, actually, I was talking about explaining things is a challenging part of my job, but actually, when you start explaining something to someone else, you suddenly realize, oh, heck, I don't understand how this works. Or, you go, okay, so you do this, and then magic happens, and then you get the result, and you're like, yeah, okay, I don't understand what's happening in that little section where I just said magic happens there. So explaining things to other people is a great way to help improve your understanding and knowledge of something, how you work, because that's where you realize that there's gaps in what your understanding is. So this could be writing blogs, could be giving presentations, creating videos, maybe just explaining to your other colleagues or other students on your course, if there's a particular module that they're struggling with or you're struggling with, discuss it amongst each other and say, well, how does this work? How do we understand that? And try and explain things to other people. I think that's really useful as a way to help improve your understanding. And I think the final thing as well is just to try and, as much as possible, help other people be more effective more valuable. Part of that is, like I say, explaining how things work to help them understand it. That also helps you, but also just kind of help people in your community. If you see that they're working on something and you can assist with that, I think that's a good way to improve, your visibility, and the other person gets something from it. To give a personal example, Mr. Feuerstein, as you call him, runs what was the time called the PL SQL Challenge. So this is a website he created, and every day he would create a brand new quiz on PL SQL, and lots of people play this. And so I played this for a while, and I was doing okay in the thing, but I thought to myself, well, actually, it'd be interesting to have more different types of quizzes on there. So we'd already added a SQL-specific quiz, but I, at the time, was spending a lot of time like as business information, data architect person, designing databases, data structures, and I thought that would be a really useful area or topic to cover as a set of quizzes. So I said, Stephen, what do you think to this? What do you think of me running, a weekly quiz on how to create tables, how to normalize tables, things like that.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, well, write it up, give me some examples, and let's go from there. And so I did that, and that's, a lot of how I got to know Stephen, really. And then one day I saw he tweeted about this job came up, and I thought, yeah, I'll give that a try. Now, and certainly having reached out to him and done something valuable to him, I'm sure helped raise my application towards the top of the pile, and, so don't always think, sometimes you do things, there's no obvious end goal, there's no obvious, I'm going to get X out of it. It's good to do things altruistically, which benefit other people. And I think if you can do those things, focus on learning, explaining your learning to other people, and then using that to help other people, I think you'll always find yourself a good career ahead of you.
Yeah, it'll always come back to you. It's like what you put out does come back. I've learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
But I also like what you said about explaining things. When you don't understand something, you get and magic happens. I have a little book over on my desk. On the front of it, I wrote what I don't know. And so as I'm working, and I come across something and I don't know it, I write it out. And then I can go back and try to explain it. And if I can't explain it, I don't understand it. So.
Yep. Very true. Very true.
Well, Chris, I hope you guys stay safe over there. I hope to get out on my boat again and do some more fishing today.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Hopefully, yes. And this will all pass one day, and hopefully we'll all be able to actually meet again in person sometime.
Well, I sure hope so. Listen, you guys have a wonderful day. Stay safe. Thank you very much.
You too, Rob, and good chatting with you.
All right. Mahalo.
All right.
All right.